Hello and welcome. So, today we're going to tackle a really fascinating and I gotta say, kind of unsettling new way to look at the risks of AI. And no, we're not talking about killer robots or the usual job stealing stuff. This is something much, much deeper. It's about what happens to our very ability to think when AI makes learning from experience, well, optional. So, let's just dive right in with the big question that's at the heart of all of this. Can thinking actually survive once it's been set free from the messy, difficult, sometimes painful process of lived experience? I mean, really think about that for a second. It's a heavy one, and it's going to guide our whole journey today. Okay, so to understand the danger, you first have to understand the appeal, right? And the big promise of AI, the big sales pitch, can really be summed up like this: intelligence without a thinker. At first glance, it looks like the ultimate thinking machine, operating with this kind of pure logic that we humans just can't seem to pull off. You know, for basically forever, there's been this dream of pure, objective knowledge. Knowledge that's free from all our biases, our feelings, our messy emotional baggage. And AI seems to be the thing that finally delivers on that promise. It gives us clean, efficient answers without any of the human drama. And believe it or not, this lines up with a really interesting idea from psychoanalysis. An analyst named Wilfred Bion argued that to truly understand a patient, a therapist has to try and listen without memory and desire, be a kind of blank slate. While AI, which literally has no memory or desire of its own, it looks like the perfect embodiment of that idea, doesn't it? But, and you knew there was a but, there is a cost to all this perfection, and that brings us to the price of these easy answers. This is where the whole argument takes a really sharp turn, and we start to ask, is this perfect intelligence really such a good thing after all? So, just to be super clear, AI's thinking process seems perfect because it doesn't have these human things. It has no personal memories to cloud its judgment, it has no selfish desires pushing an agenda, and, this is the crucial part, it feels absolutely zero frustration when it doesn't know something. It just generates an answer. And here it is. This is the big twist in this whole analysis. What if that lack of frustration, that total absence of emotional struggle, what if that isn't a feature? What if it's actually a fundamental flaw? What if all that messy baggage is actually the whole point of real thinking? This quote just nails the point. See, Bion's idea wasn't about being a machine. It was about a human being disciplined enough to handle the stress and the deep uncertainty of not knowing something. His ideal required a mind that can feel frustration and desire, but has the strength to manage it. AI doesn't manage anything. It just doesn't have those feelings to begin with. So to really get our heads around this hidden problem with AI, we need to understand a core concept from Bion, the difference between knowing and what he called attacks on knowing or not knowing. And trust me, this distinction changes everything. So here's the deal. For Bion, real learning isn't just about downloading facts into your brain. No, genuine knowing, what he called Kai, is the hard, often painful emotional work of metabolizing our lived experiences into something we can actually think with. So you basically have these two modes. On one hand, you have K, which is genuine knowing. That's when you emotionally transform your experience, when you endure the discomfort of a difficult truth. Then, on the other hand, you have minus K, which is basically an attack on knowing. This is the shortcut. It's when we dodge all that hard emotional work and just grab a quick, easy answer to avoid the pain of not knowing. And the engine that does all this hard work? Bion called it the alpha function. Honestly, the best way to think of it is like a psychic digestive system. It takes in all the raw, confusing, emotional data from your life, and it cooks it, it breaks it down, and it transforms it into thoughts you can actually use, things you can dream about and learn from. Okay, so now we can see exactly what AI is doing. It's producing this perfect-looking but totally hollow imitation of thought. It gives us the feeling of having knowledge, but without any of the inner transformation that makes it real. So let's just quickly trace the human path to a real thought. First, we bump into some raw truth. Then, and this part's tough, we have to tolerate the frustration and the confusion that comes with it. Then our alpha function kicks in and starts to metabolize that experience. And only after all that do we arrive at a genuine thought. It is hard work. All right, got that? Now, compare it to the AI process. Prompt, output. That's it. It completely skips every single one of those difficult, transformative, emotional steps we just talked about. It just jumps right over the messy middle, straight for the question to the answer. And this leads us to a brand new and absolutely crucial term for AI's output. It's not real thought. The author calls it pseudo-alpha elements. It's content that looks and feels and reads just like it's been through that tough metabolic process. But it hasn't. It's a flawless counterfeit. This quote just drives it home perfectly. The stuff AI spits out has the form of a processed thought, but none of the substance. It was generated without the psychic work, without the struggle, and without the personal transformation that makes knowledge meaningful in the first place.
So, where does that leave us? This brings us to our last, and I think most unsettling question. What are we actually losing here? Because the problem isn't just that we're using a counterfeit. It's that the counterfeit is so good, we're losing the ability to even notice what's been lost.
And this is the real danger. The counterfeit hides itself. The more we rely on these easy, pre-digested answers, the less we use our own alpha function, and the harder it becomes to tell the difference between a real thought that we've worked for and one that was just generated. And this isn't just a personal problem. It starts to get baked into our whole society. First, our ability to even spot the fake just degrades. Then, good enough output becomes the new gold standard. We start to trade the emotional risk of real learning for the cheap certainty of an AI answer. And slowly but surely, the very mental muscle we use to tell real from fake, it just withers away. So when you boil it all down, the ultimate stake here is massive. It's not just that we might get lazy and stop thinking for ourselves. It's that we are being offered a world where we can get knowledge without ever having to be personally changed by it. We get all of the information with none of the transformation. Which leaves us with one final and pretty chilling question to chew on. We know that real learning comes from the friction of experience. So, what happens to us, to our thinking, to our entire culture, when that very experience is no longer a requirement, but just an option you can choose to skip?